Welcome to the Metacognition podcast, where we're going to tell you how to think.
That's good.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. We've been looking over Make It Stick, which, if you haven't read, is written by some guys I can't remember, but
I think it's the compilation of Harvard studies, if I recall.
uh, there's at least one neuroscientist who championed a set of studies. This is great. Like, hey, here's a podcast on how to learn and remember things, and I don't remember shit. Um, it's a good book though. I haven't bothered committing the authors to memory, but it is kind of I would describe it as a summary of results from various studies on metacognition and student performance, athletic performance, and training principles and methodologies.
Basically, a bunch of fucking scientists who are way smarter than us or any of you listening got together, took a bunch of fucking studies from people that were way smarter than them, and then wrote a book on how to not suck at thinking and preparing and practicing, basically.
Sure. Yeah, there you go. And the first chapter is called "Learning is Misunderstood." As you might imagine, kind of goes over a lot of uh, learning malpractice that we actually kind of have taken as dogma and effective practice in our. Sorry, I'm distracted by this cat.
Yeah, but that's very distracting. It's a beautiful kid. Beautiful.
It's how we don't know how to learn good, and I'm just gonna start with some quotes from the book that we'll be discussing. The first of which is that rereading text and mass practice of a skill are by far the preferred study strategies of learners of all stripes, but they're also among the least productive. Uh, it's funny because as a student, at least in college, I was a very serious student. I cared a lot about my grades. I worked really hard, and this was my primary method of studying.
Yeah,
um,
I do.
and
So,
yeah,
so I just want to set the stage here. You're an accomplished engineer. You went from school. You were a serious student. You went from school to Microsoft, and then did your own startup, and now you're with Riot Games. And I am an opera singer. My whole scholastic education was based around practicing, and I didn't really get much better until I stopped doing this. That this idea that you repeat, you reread, practice makes permanent, get a routine. And really, the quote that saved me from repeating this mistake was my teacher came up to me and said, "You should never sing the same way twice." And that was where my improvement started. Because before I was reliant on these books that had outlined a routine, I memorized the routine, and I thought that that was a victory, and it's not.
well, that's the thing, right? Is that like the education system, at least that my schooling rewarded this, right? Like I remember I had
Yeah,
to test. Uh, like my study routine was basically read. I would read the chapters as assigned, as they were, as the quarters would progress, right? And then leading up to a midterm or final, I would reread them and take diligent, like handwritten notes, which at least is something slightly better than just reading them. But it was basically about committing the information to memory. And I remember this one test in our programming language concepts class where there was like this one little esoteric piece of information that was from the reading, um, that I managed to get right because that's how I prepared, right?
yeah.
And it was a controversial question when the tests were handed back because most people did not do the reading or at least didn't prepare that way from the reading and were unhappy about it. Um, and you could definitely, or like this was not something that was covered in class. It was not something that the professor emphasized. It was just like a did you do the reading kind of question, right? And or not even did you do the reading, did you review the reading before the test?
Yeah.
So like it kind of, after an experience like that, if you get a crappy grade or you miss that question, you're gonna think, oh, well, next time I just need to like reread the passages, right? So there's an emphasis on that study habit, even though it's shown throughout the book, right? There are, by that book I mean Make It Stick, there are lots of examples of how this does not actually work as a study method, right? If you want to retain information long term.
And so there's your music example and there's your engineer example. And then one of the things that to me stuck in my mind was the example of a Brood War player, a StarCraft player by the name of Froz, which is super old school. And Day 9 actually talked about this, that when he won, Day 9 being the StarCraft commentator who used to be a player, when he won his biggest tournament, he copied Froz's method. And Froz's method of practice was to change the height of the chair, change the AC, change the temperature, super cold, super hot, super high chair, super low chair, adjust the mouse position, adjust the keyboard position. Like every game changed something drastically. And what that allowed Frost to do is he entered a tournament prepared for any gaming setup and any gaming environment. He was really hard to tilt. I think when we have practical application of something we practice, of something we study, we're never going to get the same thing. And so that therein lies, I think, one of the major faults behind the repetition. If I am preparing an aria, a song, if you will, and I'm going to an audition, no pianist will ever play the same thing. Right? They're going to play the notes and I'm going to have to sing. And if I suck because the pianist sucks or the pianist does something wrong, I'm not allowed to turn around and say, you did that wrong. I have to keep going. So when I sit down and learn a piece of music, it's not enough to hit the notes in the perfect timing with the perfect notes and all the phrasing and repeat that over and over again. It's not good enough. I have to have so many different options. And the only way that I can have those options is every time I sit down with that phrase in that piece of music, I have to do it a little different and play with this and play with that and start to dissect that element. And then I have a much richer understanding on the back end of that. I think a good example, I don't know as much about coding as you do. I am a hobbyist, a dirty, dirty hobbyist. But syntax is one of those things like people copying and pasting code, like this idea that repetition in code, right there, I would just imagine that's inherently like not useful. So
I mean, it's useful, but not as a learning exercise, right?
right.
And actually, like that, I'll skip. We have a list of prompts here, or rather, a list of excerpts from the book that we were going to discuss. I'm going to skip to one that's immediately relevant here, which is that trying to solve a problem before being taught the solution leads to better learning, even when errors are made in the attempt. Which is precisely why, like, going to Stack Overflow, copying and pasting some solution into your project might get you through the problem, but you have definitely learned nothing. Um, and at the very least, right, if you're facing a problem that you don't know how to solve as a programmer, and it's if you want to at least be able to tackle that problem next time, you're much better off attempting to solve it, knowing that you can go search the internet for a canned solution after the fact. And if you get it wrong, if you can't even figure it out after many attempts, and then go get the solution from somewhere on the internet and copy and paste it in, you'll have at least taken something away, and you'll also have a much better understanding of the code that you're borrowing or stealing or using, whatever you want to, however you want to describe that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and this is something I try and do now when I read papers as well. If I come across a proposed, like, an abstract of a paper will often describe the problem and then summarize the solution. Anytime you get to a point where a problem is described and you know that the solution is going to be described afterwards, if you pause, take a moment, and try to imagine how you would solve the problem, I've found that very helpful. definitely gives me some more insights into why they might make certain decisions. Sometimes you don't come up with a solution and you just have no idea and want to read the thing and move on, but it's something I've noticed is definitely helpful, and it's kind of corroborated by um, the claims in Make It Stick here.
Yeah.
Actually, there's one more prompt I really wanted to talk about. Yeah, here we go. It's widely believed by teachers, trainers, and coaches that the most effective way to master a new skill is to give it dogged, single-minded focus, practicing over and over again until you've got it down. Our faith in
Dog
this
is
runs
single
deep.
minded.
Our faith in this idea runs deep because most of us see fast gains during the learning phase of mass practice. What's apparent from the research, though, is that gains achieved during mass practice are transitory and melt away very quickly. Um, and I immediately, when highlighting this passage, remembered the when you came over and we grinded StarCraft 2 for like a week, and
Yeah.
I leveled up hard in the ranks and was able to A move and do all sorts of, well, okay, I could macro stalkers. um,
And Void Race.
yeah, and I was clean. The build was clean enough where I like could do real timing attacks and just overwhelm people. Um, but like I remember, that was a very intense week of just doing that. Uh, and then I remember going back to play again just maybe a week or two later, and I couldn't do it anymore. It was
Yeah.
gone. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
And this is I think the counter to this, and this is the solution we both have opted to do since. What I love is that what we've been doing with like CS:GO or Valorant, or now you with Guilty Gear, is that we've been taking, and I'll translate this to a musical parallel as well. But what we've been doing in video games since we moved to first-person shooters has been 15 minutes of practice in the 15 minutes of practice at night, and that 15 minutes of practice is only really sometimes. And the craziest performances I've ever had was as a result of just consistently doing that. I had a 180 flick, which is just a crazy swing of the mouse right on the guy's head, and I was called a hacker. It's just, it's just from 15 minutes of practice here and there. You know, grinding it out is not a good idea. And as a music parallel, I have stopped practicing 4 hours a day, which was emphasized as something that was a positive. The Outliers, which is another book we should cover at one point, but The Outliers is the popularization of the idea of 10 years and 10,000 hours to become a master or something, or an expert at something. And so I was practicing in school. I was practicing 4 hours a day, but nothing was really sticking. And so what I've opted to do instead is every time I get a chance, I'll focus on one thing and I'll switch it up and I'll randomize it. That has led to demonstrable, dramatic progress in singing that my teachers are even astounded. And it's just all based on these principles. It's really simple. Don't do the same thing over again, and don't do it for long periods.
right. Yeah. I've been working on improving my Guilty Gear game, and uh, I've been trying to abide by that as well. Basically, every morning or most mornings, I will play for at least like a half hour. Usually, I have something I'm working on that's like a result of having lost a particular match, and due to a specific habit or thing I don't quite understand or don't have a grasp on. And I have a giant list of these. Like, you can improve at this bullet item, and I have many bullet items, and I try and not necessarily randomize them, but I will try and work on different ones every day, understanding that like um, so one of the other principles in Make It Stick that's kind of laid out is the fact that if you allow yourself to forget a component of a skill or a piece of information and force yourself to recall it later, that effort you spend in trying to remember it and work at it again, and bring it from the depths of your memory, will strengthen those neural connections and allow you to, like, it helps transition that information from like a temporary storage in your brain to like where we store long-term information. And so varying your practice and allowing yourself to, like, all right, well, I practiced this thing a few days ago. I'm going to, now is the time to revisit it. And it's hard for me because it was a few days ago and I don't quite remember what I was doing. That gap is actually good for you, and helps you create the depth in that skill. And so, like, I like to, interleaved learning is another term that's used here. So like, if you don't want to just like work on one thing over and over and over again until you've got it and then move on to the next. You're much better off kind of stratifying your practice regimen and covering multiple sub skills or pieces of information over time. And that extra difficulty, the fact that that's harder, doesn't feel as good as mass practice because you're not visibly making that progress as quickly. But ultimately, it gives you a deeper, richer, and longer term command of that skill, or those skills. So do
Who
lots
is
of
the
stuff.
guy? Yeah, and this just I guess to cap this idea off, who is the guy that created Doom that is also an engineer?
Oh, John Carmack.
John Carmack was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and when Joe Rogan inquired as to how John Carmack consistently works about 13 to 14 hours a day, John Carmack said, "I just don't work on the same thing," which I thought was brilliant. Like, he's like, you can't work that long on the same thing. You got to switch it up. So even when you're trying to do mass practice, you're much better off switching it up.
Yeah.
So don't mass practice, but even if you do, you have to switch it up anyway. Say Make It Stick is available on audiobook, is available on Kindle, or you can buy a paperback. Link to that in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. Otherwise, just Make It Stick. It's a beautiful, wonderful book. If you're interested in improving at literally anything, you should get it. And with that said, thank you for listening to Metacognition, where we tell you how to think. That's not a provocative statement. That's congenial. It's cordial. People want a dirty comment. Please don't.